He is a doctor at UVA Medical Center. He's also the senior policy advisor for COVID-19 equity for the White House. White House's COVID-19 response team. Let me welcome back to the show our own Dr. Cameron Webb. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me. Karen, you're a new woman to me today because since we last talked, you had a little life event.
Yeah. And let me tell y'all, I reached out to every doctor in my Rolodex. I said, listen, folk trying to be in my face, and I want to get this vaccine, but like, what do I need to know? So you're not the only one. You got back to me late, by the way. I went to every single doctor and I said, okay, give me the skinny. What's in this thing? Am I going to grow horns? What am I going to expect? Listen, I suffer from eczema. Is that going to be a problem? If you have other outlying conditions, does it exacerbate? Does it make it worse? So you gave me a breakdown, but I had already gotten it by the time you got back to me, and I was like, I made the decision to get it. But I do have a bunch of questions, and I know a lot of other folk do as well who are on the fence about it. And I really was feeling like I'm gonna wait for everybody else to get it, but then I was like, if I'm the only one without it, people can still carry it, and then I'm not protected. So it just didn't make any logical sense for me to be out in even the grocery store. I didn't want to be sick. I didn't want to catch COVID. And while I was willing to be in a plastic bubble for the rest of my life, it was turning me into an agoraphobic, crazy person. And I like life too much. So that's what happened.
Hey, you know what? But that's the way that it happens, right? You've been gathering information for months on end. I mean, last time we talked, I was just like, listen, you know too much. You're asking me questions. You can answer all these questions. That's how it happens. That's how it happens, to members of my family, my aunts, my uncles. They've been listening and learning. And then finally, my uncle was at a car wash the other day, looked across the street at the local church. They were doing vaccinations. He was like, yeah, I'm ready. He just walked over and got a shot, and it's just, people just finally get to a point where they're just like, you know what? I've been doing the work. I've been listening. I've been talking to folks that I trust. And I think I got what I need. And if they make the decision to get vaccinated or not to get vaccinated, that's up to them. But they do it based on the information they gather.
Okay, so I was talking to somebody that's getting a J&J shot today, and I was like, oh, because J&J's back. J&J's back, has been cleared. And he was like, I just want to get the one shot and I want it to be over. And I was like, okay. I got Moderna, primarily because, Chris T. Purnell and Dr. Kizzy. But I don't know if that even means anything. But I'm just like, a Black woman had a hand in making this vaccine, and a Black woman that I know was in the trials, and she actually had the vaccine. So I'm like, okay. But there are a lot of people not getting that second shot. Yeah. A lot of people. What happens if you don't get the second shot, Dr. Cameron?
Well, a couple of things. First, I want to pause for a second and say, don't believe the hype about a lot of people not getting the second shot. Okay. And the reason I say that is that what you're probably referring to is a statistic that 8% of people weren't getting the second shot. I've been practicing medicine for a while now. There's the hepatitis B vaccine, there's the Gardasil vaccine. Any vaccine that has multiple shots, people do not come back for those second and third shots. They just don't. 92% of people coming back for this shot, that's huge, first and foremost, right? That doesn't happen. For people to stop what they're doing and come back a couple weeks later and do the same thing they did a couple weeks ago, that doesn't happen in medicine. 92% is a big deal. That's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is that 8%, that's an overestimate, because some of those people got their first dose at CVS and their second dose at the mass vaccination site, or vice versa, and it just didn't cross count. And so it's overcounting. Okay. And so there's that element as well. And then finally, just like one of my cousins reached out and they were like, hey, I can't actually go get my second dose exactly 4 weeks to the day. What should I do? And I said, well, the science actually tells us you can get it as late as 42 days after your first shot, and it's still good. We want you to get it on time. That keeps things rolling. That gets you fully immunized faster, but you can get it up to 42 days late. So again, don't believe the hype. I think the concern there, if people start saying, oh, folks aren't getting their second shot, if that becomes the narrative, then that's going to convince people to say, oh, well, if it's an option, then I'm not going to get the second shot. This is a matter of people taking news that ain't even really news and turning it into something. The truth of the matter is people are getting vaccinated, and that second shot is critical. Let me just break it down real quick. First shot primes the immune system. Second shot creates neutralizing antibodies. So the second COVID gets into your body, Second shot gives you the antibodies that break it down like immediately. First shot primes your immune system. It gets you ready. 80% efficacy, right? Doesn't last quite as long. Second shot, you've got antibodies on the ready and it lasts longer. That's what the science tells us. So again, both doses are important.
So if you don't get the second shot, if you're in the 8% because you decided I had a bad experience, because I've had people call up to say that, you know, they had chills and they had diarrhea and they had a headache and I don't want to go through that again. If they decided that, they are putting themselves at risk to have gone through all of that for nothing. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is they'll have some immunity. We know that it has some immunity, right? 80% efficacy. It's not 95%, it's 80%. But it also doesn't seem to last quite as long. And it also doesn't give you that robust, immediate response that you get when you have neutralizing antibodies. So yes, it's going to have some effect, just not as much effect. And I don't want to understate something you just raised. For some people, that's a very real thing. It's hard, you know, if you get paid by the hour and you have to go get another shot that's going to take you out for a whole day, that's a big deal. You can't necessarily afford that, especially in this pandemic. And so that's part of why the president announced the paid time off. And that was something that was an equity maneuver. That was saying, hey, for some folks, taking that time off, that's a real deal. So we're going to pay employers to allow folks to take time off, not just to get the vaccine, but for the symptoms they may have a day later, right? And so those are some of the things that we're trying to do to make it easier for folks to get vaccinated.
Now, you had Pfizer, which is similar to Moderna in terms of the mRNA technology that's in it, but not the same. They're not the same. They're similar. They're both 2 shots. Is there something with Moderna and with Pfizer? Is there something different in the second shot than in the first shot?
Well, so the difference is the timing of it. So, you know, what I always tell folks.
So wait, it's the exact same shot.
It's not the exact same. It's the same technology, so it's the same approach. It has most of the same ingredients. If you think about what's in mRNA vaccines, it's really 4 ingredients primarily. It's going to be the mRNA itself, so that's the message that goes to your body that tells it look out for that spike protein. So the mRNA is one thing. There's a fat layer, the lipid layer, because mRNA breaks down really fast when it gets into the body. So that lipid layer protects the mRNA long enough for it to get into the cell and teach your body how those lipids, they have a tendency to stick together. And so there are some salts that they use to make sure that the body's pH, your acid base levels are the right level, so that lipid layer can get where it needs to go. But then finally some sugars as well, because that way those lipids don't stick together when it's at those lower temperatures for that Pfizer vaccine. So those are 4 real ingredients that we see in it. But I think the thing to keep in mind, the biggest difference between the two, because the technology is very similar, slightly different amounts of vaccine in them. It's just a different formulation. But at the end of the day, the difference is that Pfizer, the whole thing is done fully immunized in 5 weeks. Moderna, it's 6 weeks, because there's 3 weeks versus 4 weeks between your first and second doses. That's a big difference. Johnson & Johnson, though, you get that shot 2 weeks later, fully immunized. 2 weeks later, you're not going to die. 2 weeks later, you're not going to be hospitalized.
I was asking a different question. I needed the answer to that question. The question is, shot 1 and shot 2, is it the same shot? Like if I go right now to CVS or whatever to get my second shot, as if I were getting my first shot, am I getting the exact same thing twice?
Yes. For Pfizer, you're going to get the exact same thing twice. For Moderna, you'll get the exact same thing twice. But I want to be careful to be clear. You can't cross over, right? You can't get Pfizer for the first dose, Moderna for the second one, and split both ways. And also, I'm not going to let it slide that you pretty much told me you were buying black by getting the Moderna vaccine, just because.
Yeah. I was absolutely.
He said support Black business, but I like it. But I think that yes, there you don't cross over between the two, but you do make sure that it's the same dose, first and second. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm being greedy. What would happen if I took Pfizer with the first one and Moderna in the second one?
Well, we just don't have evidence for how it's going to work. So nobody has data on what happens if you take one Pfizer and one Moderna.
Okay. All right, Don, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to change the topic a little bit.
Don't change the topic. This is important, because
it's kind of on the same. Okay, I'll stick similar. Kids, I've seen that we expect that one of the companies, I don't remember which,
Pfizer
Pfizer. Frankly, I don't even remember which one I took. And I think that that's kind of beyond the point. We know J&J is one shot. We know Pfizer, Moderna are two shots, but I just want people to get the shot, you know? And I appreciate that Karen did the research per her own specific medical history, but I don't want to hear nobody out here no more talking about, well, I don't know. Let's shut up. Go get the shot. Research it for yourself. But in general, our orientation should be to go get the shot. So I don't even know which one I got, but I got it. And I'm glad I got it. So kids, let's have a discussion about children. You know, we see that 12 to 15 is good, but now we're talking about in the fall, perhaps even 9 to 12 being eligible. And can you talk about that? And should we feel comfortable sending our Black kids out to get the vaccines?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, for the Pfizer vaccine, currently it's ages 16 and up, but they submitted to the FDA for ages 12 to 15. They have good data there. And actually 100% of the kids who were in that trial, 12 to 15, did not get COVID, period. So we know for a fact it prevents kids 12 to 15 from even getting COVID, period, right? And that wasn't an endpoint that we use for adults. So really, really good information there. The plan was always to do this in cohorts. So 12 to 15, then 9 to 12, then 6 to 9, 3 to 6, 6 months to age 3, right? Work our way back because we're learning something along the way from each one. We're making sure that we get it right. If you need to dose adjust. So that's what these you know, the trials are for, to make sure that we get it right. You know, I'll say, you know, my wife's an emergency doctor. I'm an internist. When one of the local pediatricians was like, hey, we're enrolling folks for the trial, we were just like, yeah, we would enroll our kids in the trial, right? Because then they would have access to the vaccine earlier. And the vaccine is, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, incredibly safe. If you look at their safety profile, really incredibly safe. And that's the ones that they're enrolling kids in. And so I think that it's not unreasonable to think that by the fall, you know, we would have gone through a lot of that process. But we've got to wait to see what the FDA says, what the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices says. That's going to play out over the next, you know, week to 2 weeks. We'll get some information back. And one thing, Don, that's really important is that a lot of folks are just like, so when can kids get vaccinated or should kids get vaccinated? And I always like to remind folks, you know, that concept of herd immunity is really important, because if you think about what a herd is doing, you have the bigger, stronger, dare I say, protected individuals who are protecting the younger, the more infirm individuals. In this instance, getting vaccinated as adults, that's how we prevent the spread of COVID in our communities. So that's part of the process here, is that, you know, if we go through that process of getting vaccinated and really have a lot of adults vaccinated, there's going to be less circulating virus that's a threat to our children long before they even get the chance to get vaccinated. So let's not make the kids carry the water on this one, right? I mean, I think they'll be just fine. It's not going to get to market if it's not safe. But let's be clear, as adults, we have the opportunity to get us to a point of sufficient immunity that we can stop this pandemic.
And you know, you have a smooth delivery primarily because you two are a lawyer as well as a physician. So you have a way, and people are very distrustful of that because you work for the administration. So they're like, of course he's going to be pushing this. How do you combat that, you know, the very job that you've been tasked with is undermined by the very job that you've been tasked with?
No, it's a great point. You know, the first thing I say is I started this working on the COVID unit, watching people get sick and die from this pandemic. And you know, our electronic medical record at my hospital, there's pictures of the individual. And when I was clicking through the pictures the first day on that unit, I saw that everybody was Black or brown. And I was just like, this is messed up. This was last year in April. And I was like, this is messed up. This pandemic's hitting us, right? So that's where my fire comes from. And so, I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, people can make whatever decisions they want to make. My job is to give good information. And if they make, it's their prerogative to make good or bad decisions with good information, right? And so I think that's what I'm out here trying to do, give the best information I can.
Dr. Cameron's here, and he doesn't have on his white coat today. He's looking. Are you off today? Or are you just tapping in? Is this your work day? I appreciate you coming in.
I don't even know what off means. Actually, Karen, I stayed up the entire night last night. I was working on some efforts to try to get some more resources to communities of color, and I just kept writing through the night. Wrote a long memo trying to get some stuff back to the people. So yeah, man, I hustle. That's what I do.
What's been your greatest frustration? I heard you and Don talking during the break, and it was nice listening to y'all talk about how young you are. What's been your biggest frustration during these COVID times, personally, professionally, as a doctor, watching what's happening?
I think for me, the biggest frustration is watching people who look like me die. I think it's watching my family members get COVID disproportionately. I mean, I have cousins, aunts, uncles, and they all have called me because I'm the doctor in the family. And I think if I have to go through one more time of you do to navigate a COVID diagnosis, and here's what you should ask for. This pandemic it's hit us really hard, and I think that's for me. A lot of people, because when I get asked to do these interviews, a lot of times people want to talk about vaccines. They think my job is about vaccines. It's not. My job is about equity. It's about making sure that we're getting tested for COVID, that we're getting the treatments we deserve, that the recovery package is serving our communities just the same. My job is about the whole gamut, and so to me, it's just about making sure that we're in this unprecedented moment in our society, and how are we making sure? And I think we've got a president, a vice president who've said explicitly we want to make sure that communities of color get what they need. And so I'm like, all right, so let's do it. Let's make that happen. So my frustration is that when we fall short of that, it's that we've got to make sure that we full court press. We can't let people get left behind in this moment. And so that's what keeps me up at night, literally.